Wait. Yeah, I'm still on the. um, Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday of Conversations with, and I'm very honored to have Keith Willard with us today. So, Keith, thank you so much for
It's
being with
great.
us.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And please tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I am the owner of Keith Willard Events, which is a wedding event company here in South Florida. I'm also the president of NACE, which is the National Association of Catering and Events here for the Palm Beach and Broward counties. And I'm also the host of my weekly show called Behind the Veil, which is every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. In a nutshell.
Okay, so let me start. Weddings are still going on.
Yep.
No one stopped weddings.
Nope.
People are still getting married, regardless of the numbers going up.
Yes.
I've seen that weddings are super spreaders. There
be.
was a little town in, I don't remember the state in Midwest United States.
Yeah.
Where everybody was safe, and thanks to a wedding, it was a super spreader because one of the people in the band didn't know that he had COVID.
And that's a real possibility. Yeah.
Correct. So what is our responsibility? Is our responsibility keeping the guests safe?
Well, I think our responsibility as planners is anything that has to do with the wedding. I mean, our job for the bride is to be her advocate or his advocate, depending on who what the wedding party consists of. But to be their advocate, to be the person that speaks the truth, that shows them, not only just the positive, but the negatives, the pros and cons of every situation. And that includes doing an event here during, COVID, because honestly, you don't want to stop celebrations and you don't want to stop love in general. And there are ways that you can reduce the effects, reduce the risks. And as somebody that's done a couple of weddings already in COVID and has another wedding coming up on December 12th, there's layers of protection that we're starting to put into the wedding planning. But at the end of the day, it's our job to speak the truth to our clients. We can't just say, oh, everything's going to be fine, it's going to be a perfect day, don't worry about the virus, don't worry about COVID. Why would we do that? That's crazy, because then what happens later when it does become a super spreader? Our job is to try to give our clients the truth about the logistics that are going to happen, the worries, the positives, the negatives, and then start planning the event based on their decision. But they have to have all the information first before they decide whether or not to move forward with their wedding now or to postpone it until after a vaccine. And thank God, vaccines already being distributed in England. So I'm starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Correct, there is a light. But take me to the pros and cons so that everybody that's listening to us actually knows what's going on.
So one of the things that we discussed on my show is the grief. People go through grief when they have to move a wedding. There is a loss of the anticipated experience because a bride, let's say that a bride a year ago planned her wedding for, and we're going to say December 12th, right? Planned her wedding for December 12th. So over the last 9 months, 10 months, she has had to deal with a ridiculous amount of stress, not only with the planning of the wedding, but also making sure following, all the virus and how many people are being infected every day. Now we're getting closer to the wedding and she still wants to do it, right? She still wants to move forward with the wedding. The pros are that she's not going to have that loss of anticipated experience, that she can have something that she looks forward to, that they get to keep their original wedding date, that all the planning that happened over the last year is still going to move forward. The cons are, obviously, is that there's going to be some changes when it comes to how we set up the wedding. there's a couple, and I always talk about layers of security. Like you're going to have layers like blankets of security to help reduce the cause or spread of the virus in case somebody there happens to have it. And that can be done in a couple of different ways. One of the ones that we're employing most recently is the rapid testing, because there are tests out there that does rapid testing in 15 minutes. But it's also important to make sure that your client understands that's just a snapshot of what's happening right now, and that there could be somebody in there that doesn't show up positive, but yet is positive and can still spread the virus. But again,
that is a false sense of security.
No, it's like I said, we're talking about layers of security. So the first thing is that, and if anybody shows up positive, then we know, okay, good, they're not going to be part of the event. The second layer of security,
you just tell them goodbye, done.
You know, and I can't imagine that anybody that gets a positive test result would say anything else but, oh, I gotta go. You know what I mean? I gotta go. The second layer of security would be obviously masks, sanitizers, all those things that keep us from getting the virus in normal circumstances. The same things that we probably would do if we went to the grocery store or we went to fill up gas. We're going to make sure that we have our hands clean, that we have a mask on, that even a face shield, because a lot of people are doing face shields. For people that are wearing glasses, that's even better because they've already got the face shield, because, that's the whole point of a face shield, is to keep it from touching. But one of the things that people forget is that the biggest means of transmission are people touching their face. And so when people have a mask on, it reminds them not to touch their face, which dramatically reduces the ability for the virus to be caught from person to person. Then there's a third layer of protection, and you do that social distancing. So then you set up your chairs for the ceremony, you set up your tables for the reception in a socially distant manner. You put 10 feet, 8 feet between chair to chair. You group people by pods, so that way one family sits at table one, that typically is together. Another family sits at table two. Your best friends sit at table three.
How many people are you sitting at a table?
Well, and that really changes because, the wedding that we did just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had some people that were very wary, and as they should be, that we just sat two to a table. Obviously, we've changed the table size to make sure that it didn't feel overwhelming. You're not going to put two people at a 60-inch round. You're going to put two people at a 48-inch or less, right? And then we had other tables that had 4, 6, and I think the highest we went on that one was 8, but that was for the family themselves, the bride, the groom, the parents, who had all been spending the last 2 weeks together. So we knew that pod was already together.
That they were okay.
Right.
But that also increases the budget, because for each table, you need a centerpiece, the tablecloth. So it increases some of the budgets.
Well, I'm finding that sometimes that changes, because originally, if we were talking about 100 people for a wedding, and now we're talking about 50 people for a wedding, we're still going to need the 10 tables with less people. So the original budget typically stays fairly similar. The biggest reduction, obviously, food and beverage. You're going to get a lot less on the food and beverage, but the decor, you're going to probably keep it up where it was previously.
Okay. So let me ask you something else.
Yeah.
The testing. So the bride, that goes into the budget, correct?
100%.
100%. And that is a saliva testing?
It is. It's a rapid testing. There are 2 companies in South Florida that are currently doing it. I think there's probably a third out there as well. And they do everything. You hire them. They come in. They take care of all of it. One of the things that you have to adjust for, obviously, is having a pre-cocktail or pre-ceremony cocktail reception and a post-ceremony cocktail reception. The pre, obviously, because you want to keep people socially distanced until they get their test result, which is typically in 15 minutes, which is nothing when it comes to, obviously trying to get some information, because all of this is really, again, layers of protection. It doesn't ever take away the complete risk of transmission. None of this does. And that's, and that's one of the things that each couple has to assess on their own, about whether or not they feel comfortable with the idea that nothing is going to be 100% effective. But what you can do is keep your wedding from being a super spreader by making sure people follow the rules.
But that's where I go. Up to where does our responsibility of keeping our guests safe? Like they need to understand that they need to follow protocols. But one of the other ways of doing it is making the test as soon as they arrive at Valet.
Right.
As soon as they arrive at Valet, you do the test.
Mm-hmm.
And then offer them a drink on the side while the test comes out. If not, they can get back on their car.
Exactly, 100%. And if anybody has an issue with actually being tested, you probably don't want them at your wedding anyway.
Correct.
You know, and that comes, again, you're going to talk about all these pros and cons. You know, not everybody feels comfortable with providing testing for all of their guests. They do have to let their guests know ahead of time that everybody's going to be tested, and let the guests decide whether or not they feel comfortable still coming. So at the end of the day, we're not trying to force anything, and nobody should on anybody. All we're trying to do is create an event that is as safe as possible. During obviously the world that we have today. Are you keeping
information of the guests for contact tracing?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You have to, you know, and I know that probably goes above and beyond what a planner's responsibility normally would be, but we are in unprecedented times. We are in uncharted territory. And at the end of the day, my job is to do everything I can to not only make sure that the event itself is safe, but to follow up and make sure that the guests are safe when it comes specifically to COVID. Now, it is a lot of responsibility. I don't think that it's right for every planner to get involved in this kind of world. A lot of people are very like, okay, my event is done, I'm moving on. But that's not how I work. I really want to make sure that not only is the event incredible and that they have beautiful memories from the day, but I also want to make sure that nothing tarnishes it afterwards. So with things that I can follow up on. And one of those things is contact test tracing. Where's my words?
There you go. Tell you a story. And this was many years ago. It had nothing to do with COVID.
Okay.
And this was many, many years ago, but it came to my mind because it relates to what you just said, the after. I did a Shabbat dinner for one of my cousins that was getting married.
Right.
So we were very close. We invited the whole family. I did 50 people. Shabbat dinner, the whole thing. It was beautiful.
Right.
The bride was ecstatic. The whole family thanked me a lot. The whole thing. Next day, my son is not feeling well. Literally, the pains were horrible. He started getting a fever. His stomach ached. It was horrible. And I started getting calls from a lot of the people that came that they were the same.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, one of the kids who came to the dinner, he was a kid. So they had to take him to the doctor. And when they tested him, it was salmonella.
Wow.
So it was like a spreader. And well,
that would have been food poisoning. Yeah, that would have been
food poisoning, but it was salmonella. We had to go to the FDA. We had to disclose where we bought the chicken, the whole thing. But it literally created a whole thing after the fact. And then people started making fun. Oh, don't go to her house for Shabbat. Or go to her house, you're going to lose weight.
Well, lose weight, honey, I'm over there right now. I got COVID-20.
It was a very difficult situation because it was out of our hands.
Right.
So I can imagine right now what people are going through in case they find something and it goes to a super spreader. And the feeling is not, oh, my love, I had the best day ever.
Right.
Why did I do this? Now this one is sick.
So one of the things that I talk to my brides about is, don't what if yourself to death. right? At the end of the day, everybody that's coming to the event is an adult. They are responsible for themselves. They should make decisions for themselves. And our job is obviously to provide as much of a safe experience as possible. But at the end of the day, adults are responsible for themselves. And if God forbid, something happens, all we can do is inform people, follow up, and make sure that we control it as much as possible. Because let's say we have we have a person that comes and they're positive, and God forbid that happens, but right. And let's say that they give it to maybe one other person because we've taken all the extra precautions, but we find out later that the one person was positive. So we want to make sure that we follow up with all the guests to make sure that they know to then socially distance from everybody else for 14 days, that they need to quarantine for 14 days. So it doesn't get even worse. You want to control that as much as possible, whatever's in our power. But again,
what happens with guests coming in for the wedding, like traveling? For example, here, the standards of traveling within the United States are very light or none.
Right.
But for example, if you travel internationally, it's very strict. You have to get a negative test, a PCR, not just a rapid test. You have to get a PCR test, which is the nasal test,
right,
72 hours before. So what happens with guests traveling within the United States for the wedding?
So is
there any preparation that you're doing in those cases?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been doing is that we've been saying 14 days before the wedding, sending everybody a little reminder to say that we are looking forward to having you at the wedding. If you could please, for the next 14 days, socially distance yourself and protect yourself at all costs, at as much as you possibly can, because you are going to be going to a group setting. So the idea is that you try to make sure that people are responsible, and you remind them that in a couple of weeks, you're going to be in a group of people, and you don't want to be the person that spreads that virus. Now,
but what about if they're traveling, if they're getting on a plane?
Well, and that's part of it, because they find that planes are actually one of the safest places you can be because of how the ventilation systems work. There's HEPA filters on every single airplane. The ventilation goes from top down. So even if you're sitting next to somebody with a mask and let's say a visor, you are basically 6 feet apart. There are studies after study after study that says that a plane itself is a safe place to be as long as you take precautions.
As long as correct.
But you gotta take precautions.
Yeah.
And that's hoping that the people that you've invited are taking responsibility. And honestly, why would you invite anybody that you feel wouldn't take this seriously and would put any of your other guests in danger? You just wouldn't. So that's part of the conversation that you have with the bride, is making sure that everybody that's on the guest list is going to take this seriously. And so that way people can have a good time at the event.
So that's part of our responsibility, making sure that they know.
Well, it's our responsibility to let them know. Yeah.
I call it educating our clients and educating the people coming in.
Well, how many times have you been a psychologist to a bride?
Oh, 2 a.m.
Right? Exactly. So, I feel like this is no different. I know. And I feel like this is no different. This is just one more part of our job.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated now.
It is a little bit more complicated. But again, most of my weddings, I'd say 90% of my weddings, move their date from this year to next year. Awesome. There are 4 weddings. You think about that, 4 weddings. The last one being December 12th, that decided to keep their wedding, but reduce the count dramatically. Nobody kept their count original. Everybody said, even like a W wedding that was 150 people went down to 25 people, and we moved it to their backyard. The other thing that we're doing on December 12th is that instead of being in the ballroom, we're actually going to set up a clear tent on the 12th floor, which is out in the open. So because they say it's even safer when you're out in the open. So that's what we're doing, is we're taking the event and moving it outside to hopefully reduce, again, another level of protection to help reduce the possibility of spread.
So let me ask you, now, this is a question that I've been finding out And recently I was doing an event. It's not a wedding, it was a corporate event.
Yeah.
And none of the venues have accepted it because of the number of guests.
Right.
So when a venue tells you that the maximum number of guests is, let's put a number, 30.
Yep.
Okay, so 30 is the number of guests, but everybody forgets the fact that catering can bring 15 people easily.
Easily.
To set
Yes.
up the buffet, to set up the serving. It depends on how you do it, but you can have 15 people at least.
Well,
The ones that prepare, the servers, the bar.
well,
So,
first of all, you
yeah,
probably steer people away from a buffet. I don't think buffets are probably appropriate at the moment, but I understand the 15 person, coming in.
there is a safe way to do it, by the way.
There is. There absolutely 100%. There is a safe way to do it, and it's plexiglass and a little window at the bottom. Yes, I mean we've all become experts in this. How things spread. Oh my God, have we ever become experts on this? But that's our job.
Yeah, correct. But so what do you do? How do you explain to the bride? Okay, 30 people is 30 guests. Are some venues being a little overboard, saying, okay, it's 30 guests plus the setup,
right?
Plus the vendors, because not only you have the vendors of catering, you have either a DJ or a band, which a DJ is one person, but a band can be 5 to 6 people. So you keep on adding.
Easily.
Then there's a photographer. There's one more. The video person.
Yep.
That's 2 or 3 more.
100%.
Then there's the officiant, either the priest or the rabbi. That's one more.
Yeah.
Which is not in the guest list.
Well, and now you're throwing a party for the vendors.
Correct.
Because now you just have the bride and groom in the room with a whole bunch of other people. So,
So that part, the venue are now having to come up with more strict guidelines to be able to tell you, okay, this is our guest list.
Right.
For example, what happens with the decor? Some of the people are doing the decor and everybody in the setup needs to leave by the time.
Oh, 100%. Well, and that's just an extra level of what our communication skills, part of our job obviously is communicating between all the vendors, including the venue itself. And as a previous director of catering for hotels, I absolutely understand their side of it, because obviously they're trying to protect their brand, their company from any possible lawsuits because they overcrowded a space, or get fined because they allowed more people in the room than is what is allowed currently. And I know that Broward County is actually sending people randomly to hotels during the weekend to see if they're following the rules. So that's a real thing. It's not one of those random things that hotels put into place because they think, oh, well, we're just going to try to protect yourself. It's literally something that they have to be aware of, because at any point they could have an inspector come in, and if there's 60 people in the room and the maximum is 40, they get fined. Done. So the other thing is,
I'm glad to hear that they're actually following up with guidance.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's both positive and negative. Obviously, positive is because obviously they're trying to keep people safe and they're making sure people follow the rules. But then on the other side, if you have an extra person show up or 2 extra people show up and you're kind of caught with like, what do I do with you now? There's human beings are unfortunately, after a couple of drinks, you have to reinforce some of those behaviors to make sure that they're following the guidelines. And it always happens that right at that moment when you're about to go up and tell people to like stop dancing, that you only can have 6 people on the dance floor, right then is when the inspector would come in. So, it's about being on top of things constantly. But when we're talking about occupancy in the space, it is our job to investigate that term, 30 people. And so my job is to talk to the hotel reps and say, okay, when you say 30 people, what does that mean? 30 people in total or 30 guests plus? And And typically the answer is pretty quick and it's pretty straightforward, and catering people aren't trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. They're just trying to protect the company and they're trying to protect the event on their side. A catering person, a catering manager or director of catering is kind of your best ally when it comes to creating safe events. And so you want to work with them. Yeah.
They also want to work. They also want to continue in a safe way.
Well, and they also want to be known as the hotel that provides safe events so more people book with them. So, like Pelican Grand is doing a really good job right now of doing a lot of events. They've been fairly busy over the last 6 weeks since Broward County lifted some of the orders. And that's actually where my December 12th wedding is. And they are very specific about making sure that people follow the rules. And the nice thing is that their catering manager actually stays through part of the event to help with keeping people informed, updated, making sure that the rules are being followed.
And the rules are enforced.
Yeah.
No,
so it's nice. It's nice because yeah.
Wow.
So, because at the end of the day, our job, all of us, director of catering, down to the planner, to the DJ, to the band, to the servers, our job is to do everything we possibly can to keep our clients safe because they become our family. We're the parents, they're the kids. Our job is to keep our kids safe, and our kids are going to act up. So they're going to do crazy things.
They're going to act up, and that was my next question to you.
Yeah.
What happens if you have a bride that acts up and her family is, let me dance, I don't want to wear a mask, don't, like I'm having a good time, don't
Right.
spoil it. And they go to the bride, oh, your planner is being horrible.
Well, the thing is that it's sometimes how you say something is much more important than what you say. It's if you come across in a friendly manner, if you come across as protection and not overbearing, like, we're just trying to keep people safe. If you stay authentic, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a bad reaction. The other thing is that most planners already know the personalities of their brides. They should up until this point, because God knows we've gone through the ringer with them on the stress. So we're going to know ahead of time whether or not they're going to be the kind of bride that follows the rules. And if they're not, you have to have a come to Jesus moment with them. You have to pull them out of the room and say, look, we want you to have an amazing
parent conversation.
You have to have that conversation, and you have to, again, give them the pros and cons. And you say, look, yes, you may be having a great time tonight and you're having an awesome time dancing and everybody wants their masks off. But then tomorrow or next week, when everybody starts finding out that your event became a super spreader, are you still going to be as thrilled with the event? So you need to really think about that. You really need to think about whether or not you want to be responsible for everybody in this room to become infected if we miss somebody with the testing. And again, 99% of the time, they're gonna say, oh, absolutely, we're gonna move forward. We're gonna make sure we wear a mask. And that one little percentage that doesn't, well, that's when having a great partnership with the hotel comes into play, because at some point you're going to have to stop the music if people are just not doing what they need to do. You have to. Whether or not you come out smelling like roses, our job, again, is a responsibility to keep people safe. We've done everything right. It's up to the event. During the event, you have to become
the parent. This is a rule. No, you're totally right. But what happens with those parents that now, especially now, with so many little guests, they say, oh, no, I don't need a planner. I can do this on my own. I went to a wedding that I had to go. They told me it was only 20 people. To my surprise, I get there, it was 50.
Oh, gosh.
So I stayed, I had to go. It was a very close family member.
Right.
I stayed like one of those kids in the corner that was put in the corner because I was really afraid.
Yes.
Then, while the ceremony started, I went to the other side. Yes, the venue was huge. It was a 500 venue with 50 people. That was fine.
Great.
But when I went to the catering, it was a buffet. None of the waiters had masks or had gloves.
Oh, no, I'm out of there. I'm out of there.
before I got out of there, I actually went and talked to the catering manager.
Right.
And I said, do you realize what you're doing?
Right.
Like, do you realize what you're doing? This is not on you, but you're infecting a lot of people. You don't know who has a medical condition. So, of
Right.
course, I didn't try the food. I left
Yeah.
the
No,
whole thing.
but that's
But
because you're an adult and you saw those warning signs, you made a decision for yourself, and that's what we're hoping that most people do when it comes to a wedding is be an adult, make a choice for yourself that keeps yourself safe. If
yeah,
you're seeing that,
hopefully are the people that are getting married and make those choices of
uh,
being safe.
and
Because
again, it is about being truthful. It is. You have to be truthful with your clients. You can't be the yes person all the time. It's great to build a joyous, but I find that I'm a practical planner. I look at making sure that I don't want to be the person that creates an event nobody has done. What I want to do is create an event that has been tried and true and that we improve on the logistics of it. So people at the end of the day go, God, that was an amazing event. But they can't really put their finger on why it was so great because it felt natural. It felt calm. It felt like they weren't hurted. And I think the same thing has to happen with these type of things. The other part of that is that you could actually do two separate things. You could have a guest list for just the ceremony for people that want to see the wedding, but then don't feel comfortable with dinner. And then the guest list that are going to be at the ceremony and reception. So, and I'll give you an example. So the December 12th wedding, we have 70 people coming to the ceremony and we're going to spread it out because it's on the beach. So we're spreading it out. But then for the dinner, we only have 50. So it's different, right? So
you're kicking out 20.
no, we're not kicking them out. It was specific on their reply card that they wanted to come to the ceremony only. And so,
okay.
yeah. And so that's great because that gives everybody a way to actually be there. It also, hopefully people bring their checks, their wedding gift if they come just to the ceremony. So, the thing is that you try to provide as many options for people to feel safe. And one of those ways is allowing people just to come to the ceremony and not to make them feel bad that they're not going to stay for the reception. Why should they feel bad? We're in unusual times. Our job is to be as warm, as welcoming as possible in all those scenarios. And so, so you have a ceremony that you have 70 people, you have a dinner that's 50 people that's socially distanced, and you pay attention to the people that say, look, I want to come to the reception, but can we get a table by ourselves? Absolutely. If the space can handle it, absolutely. And if the space can't, you need to tell them that unfortunately that's not possible. And let them make that decision. That's because at the end of the day, you don't want to bring anybody in on a false sense of security. I keep talking about these layers of protection.
No, you're totally right. I wish everybody was like you. And I can imagine the floor plans, how many times it changes.
Changes daily.
Time. It changes daily.
Changes daily. But that's the thing.
And if somebody is afraid the day before, they'll call you. I'm not going. So take it out. Correct.
And that's the thing is that I've told my clients that I said, look, you're going to have, so let's say that your guest list dropped by 30% because people are worried. It's probably going to drop another 20% between the time you get the response cards from and the time the wedding happens. And that's okay because you got to build in that anticipation. You got to let the couple know, look, this is normal and customary.
Personal.
Yeah, it's not personal.
It's not personal.
No. And you want to keep
safety.
Right. And you really only want people there that are going to feel safe, that are going to feel comfortable, that are going to take it seriously, that are going to be adults, they're going to try to do everything they can to protect themselves, that they're going to follow the rules. I know that seems like a really long list, but if you decide that you want to move forward with your wedding, that is the list you have to contend with. And that's okay, because honestly, once you get through that list, you're going to have an amazing time. The event is still going to be everything you wanted. And sometimes it's more, because honestly, at the end of the day, the people that end up coming to the event are going to be the ones that mean the most to you. Correct. Right? Because it's not going to be the third cousin. It's not going to be the office person that decides to come, because they're going to say no right away. It's going to be your mother, your father, your first cousins, your brothers, your best friend. It's going to be that close-knit people that you probably see every day anyway, that you're probably already interacting with all the time. And so that already puts another layer of security
on top. But Keith, I know that we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you one last question.
That happened so quick. Oh my goodness, 30 minutes. That's not enough
I
time.
know. But today, England announced that they're starting to distribute the actual vaccine.
Thank
so
God.
People are actually being vaccinated and today or within the next weeks. And I know that the US is moving forward with 2 of their vaccines.
Yep.
So what happens after? I'm saying moving forward to summer, spring, summer, when we start getting back to normal. What's going to happen then?
Well, obviously we are stacking the books, so to speak, because a lot of these weddings that were in 2020, we moved to 2021. And a lot of times we used alternate dates to help people, not get additional fees, not be able to work on their contracts. So a lot of times our brides in 2020 moved to Fridays and Sundays in order to make sure that the contracts stay the same and that they keep their price point the same without any change fees. And so now we have 2021 where we're going to have weddings on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There may be weekends. I'm hoping that there's only a Friday and Saturday in most cases. But what that means is that us as planners, we're going to have to really get into time management. We're going to have to be able to really think about the time that it takes to plan a wedding. And we're going to have to be more efficient than ever. We're going to have to have everything together and organized. We're going to have to be super organized about everything that we do in 2021 in order to keep that same level that we've been known for. And I'm lucky because there's a ton of planners here in South Florida that all do an amazing job. And we're all thinking the same thing, is that next year it's going to be busy. And that's okay. I'm thrilled with being busy because hopefully it'll make up with 2020 a little bit, but that also means that I have to be much better about my time management.
With that, Keith, I really appreciate you being here with all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was fun. Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy that you invited me on, and it was a really interesting conversation. So thank you.
I'm happy that you're doing things right. I hope that everybody out there learned something about this. So stay tuned for next Wednesday. And everybody stay well and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.